You are the master of your fate. Let's begin. Let me tell you something most people will never say to your face. You're not stuck because you're weak. You're stuck because you can't stop saying yes. Yes to people you don't trust. Yes to plans you don't want. Yes to tasks that drain your energy and blur your purpose. And here's the truth. Every yes you give without alignment is a no to your future. You're not trapped because the world is unfair. You're trapped because you've made other people's comfort more important than your own calling. Now listen to me carefully. I have studied thousands of men and women, from industrial giants to struggling dreamers, and I saw this pattern repeat like a broken record. They knew what they wanted. They even had the skill, but they were too agreeable, too trained to please, too afraid to disappoint. So they said yes, again and again, until their dreams were buried under other people's expectations. You don't build greatness by pleasing everyone. You build it by protecting your time like a vault, by learning the sacred power of no, by remembering that your life is a mission, not a public service announcement. Now some of you are thinking, but I don't want to be rude. I don't want to hurt anyone. I don't want to look selfish. Let me respond to that with absolute clarity. Saying no to what isn't aligned is not rude. It's not mean. It's not selfish. It's self-respect in action. And if you don't protect your energy, no one else will. Because people, even the good ones, will take and take until there's nothing left. Not because they're bad, but because you never told them where the line is. So I ask you, when was the last time you said no without guilt? When was the last time you paused, asked yourself what you truly wanted, and honored that inner answer? Some of you can't remember, because the habit of saying yes runs so deep, you don't even know you're doing it anymore. You've trained the world to believe your time is flexible. Your boundaries are optional. Your needs are negotiable. But I'm here to help you change that, because you cannot build a life of intention while living on automatic compliance. You cannot rise if your yes is handed out like candy to anyone who asks. Every yes is a seed, and what you plant today, you will harvest tomorrow in results, in relationships, in energy. So choose wisely. Say yes only when it's a full yes, from your gut, your values, your future self. And when it's not, say no. Say it clean. Say it strong. Say it like someone who finally remembers that their time, their life is sacred. Because the most powerful word in the vocabulary of freedom is no. And until you learn to use it, you will stay stuck in places you were never meant to remain. Let's tell the truth plainly. You keep saying yes because it feels safer than the consequences of no. But what you call safety is really self-sabotage dressed as politeness. Now let's break this down right where it lives. Most people say yes out of habit, but habits are learned, and this one usually started in childhood. You were praised for being agreeable, for not making a fuss, for going along. You learned, maybe even without words, that being liked was more important than being honest. And now, you're still following that script. You say yes when you're tired, yes when you're overwhelmed, yes when you know deep down it's the wrong move, just to keep the peace. But let me ask you something. Whose peace are you protecting, and at what cost? Because every time you say yes to avoid conflict, you build a wall between yourself and your real destiny. You shrink a little. You delay your progress. You move one more step away from the life you were supposed to build. Now listen closely, because this is the part that stings before it sets you free. Saying yes to avoid discomfort is a form of fear, and fear, if left unchecked, becomes your master. You think saying no will cost you something, but it's your yes that's costing you everything. I want you to look at your own life. Go ahead, be honest. How many projects are you juggling because you couldn't say no? How many weekends have you sacrificed out of guilt? How many ideas have died inside you because you were too busy being useful to everyone but yourself? That's not compassion. That's self-erasure. You can't inspire others while quietly resenting your own life. You can't lead if you never pause to check where you're going. So why does saying yes feel so much easier? Because yes is rewarded. Yes is praised. Yes keeps everyone smiling, except the one person who needs your truth the most, you. But here's what the world never taught you. You don't need to explain your no. You don't owe long apologies or nervous justifications. You only need to be clear. No, I'm not available. No, that doesn't work for me. No, I have other commitments. You don't need to yell. You don't need to fight. You just need to decide. And when you start protecting your energy with that kind of clarity, something incredible happens. The right people stay, the wrong ones leave, and your life starts making space for your actual purpose, not the noise. Because here's a law of success that's never broken. Clarity attracts, compliance repels. Every yes that was meant to buy approval it fades. But every no rooted in alignment, it builds momentum. You're not on this earth to be everyone's assistant. You're here to do your work. And if that requires disappointing some people who were only there for the agreeable version of you, so be it. Because freedom doesn't come from being liked. It comes from living in truth. And if that truth means saying no to the world, so you can say yes to your future, then you owe it to yourself to speak up. Your future self is watching. Now listen carefully, because I'm going to call something out that most people spend a lifetime avoiding. People pleasing is not kindness. It's fear in a fancy outfit. It's the silent killer of progress. You think you're being helpful, polite, the bigger person, but what you're really doing is trading your peace for approval, your clarity for confusion, your power for permission. And here's the worst part. Most people don't even notice it's happening, because people pleasing doesn't destroy you all at once. It's a slow leak, a quiet erosion of self-respect. One yes when you meant no. One sure when your body screamed, please don't. One more favor, one more delay, one more compromise that nobody even thanks you for. Until one day you wake up and your schedule is full, but your soul is starved. I've seen it 1,000 times. Talented people, brilliant people, good people stuck. Not because they lacked opportunity, not because they lacked skill, but because they were afraid to be misunderstood. Afraid to say, I can't do that. Afraid to say, I'm not available. Afraid to say, that's not who I am anymore. Let me tell you something and let it land. If your life is built around pleasing people, your life will always belong to them. And when your life belongs to them, your dreams are a rental, not ownership. You are leasing your future in exchange for temporary approval. Now I know some of you are thinking, but isn't it good to be helpful? Isn't service noble? Yes, service is noble. But sacrifice without boundaries is slavery. Service uplifts, people-pleasing erases. Kindness empowers both people. People-pleasing drains, one to keep the other comfortable. And make no mistake, the world will never ask you to stop. The people who benefit from your silence, your compliance, your yes-man routine, they'll never tell you to take your power back. That's your job. That's your moment of awakening. You've got to draw a line. You've got to say, I will no longer abandon myself to make you comfortable. Because every moment you do, you're sending a message to your subconscious that you don't matter. And what you tell yourself repeatedly, you eventually believe. So let's rewire that belief today. You matter. Your time matters. Your voice matters. Your peace matters. Your future matters. And if that means letting someone else feel momentarily uncomfortable, confused, even disappointed, that is not cruelty. That is growth. Because here's the hidden truth. The people who truly love you will never require you to abandon yourself to keep their love. Let that sit in your bones. When you finally stop people-pleasing, you'll lose a few people, but you'll gain yourself. And once you've got that, you'll never settle again. Let's clear something up once and for all. Boundaries are not walls. They're gates with locks, and you hold the key. I hear it far too often. If I start setting boundaries, I'll seem selfish. If I say no, I'll lose people. Let me ask you something. If a relationship can't survive your truth, was it ever real to begin with? Boundaries are not about pushing people away. They're about showing people where you begin and where they end. And get this, boundaries don't repel the right people. They attract them. Why? Because the right people respect clarity. They appreciate it when you say what you mean. They trust you when you show consistency. They are drawn to the kind of person who doesn't shift shape to please every crowd. Do you know why boundaries make you magnetic? Because confidence is magnetic. Because certainty is rare. Because when you stop leaking your time, your focus, your energy, you start to radiate power. And people can feel that power. It's not loud, it's not arrogant, it's solid. Let me give you an example. You walk into a meeting. Everyone's talking in circles. One person calmly says, I won't take on that task, my focus is here. The room goes silent for a moment, and then everyone leans in. Why? Because someone just modeled leadership. That's what boundaries do. They signal to the world, this person knows who they are. And I'll tell you this, after sitting across from titans of industry, Ford, Edison, Carnegie, not one of them ever apologized for protecting their energy. They weren't rude, but they were ruthless with their focus. They didn't say yes to everything. They said yes to the right things and let that be enough. You think you need to do more to be worthy. I'm telling you, you need to protect more. You think saying no will make people think less of you. I'm telling you, It will make the right people see you clearly. And here's what's wild. When you finally begin to assert your boundaries, the world doesn't collapse. You don't lose everyone. You just lose the noise. And in that silence, you'll start hearing your own voice again. You'll feel your strength coming back, your purpose clarifying, your time returning. You'll stop being reactive and start being intentional. You'll show up to conversations not as a shapeshifter, but as a force, a presence, a person who doesn't need to explain or justify, because their life speaks for itself. So let me make this clear. Boundaries aren't the end of love. Boundaries are how love becomes real. Without boundaries, love turns into performance. With them, love becomes a choice, not a trap. You are not too much for having standards. You are not mean for honoring your limits. You are not selfish for guarding your peace. You're awake, and when a person becomes truly awake, they stop asking for permission to be whole. So from now on, I want you to repeat this to yourself every time you hesitate to draw a line. My peace is not up for negotiation. Say it, mean it, live it, and watch how your world changes. Let me ask you plainly, when did no become a sin? You weren't born feeling guilty for protecting your time. You were taught that, somewhere along the way, you were conditioned to believe that being agreeable made you lovable, that pleasing others made you worthy. But I've got news for you. Self-betrayal is not a virtue. If your yes cost you your peace, your purpose, or your priorities, it's a bad deal. Now hear this. Saying no is not rejection, it's redirection. It's telling the world, I know where I'm going, and I can't afford to get detoured right now. You see, people think power is in doing more, but real power is in doing what matters. Let's get practical. Here's how you say no and mean it without guilt. 1. Be clear, be kind, be firm. You don't need to write a paper explaining your refusal. You don't need to bleed out your reasons to be taken seriously. You can simply say, I can't commit to that right now. That doesn't align with my focus at the moment. I'm choosing to prioritize something else. No lies, no long-winded excuses, just truth. And here's the thing about truth. It doesn't beg, it just stands. 2. Expect pushback and don't fold. You've trained people how to treat you. Now you're retraining them. They might say, you've changed. And you say, yes, I have, I've grown. And that growth deserves protection. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always feel offended when you find your voice. That's not your burden. Let them adjust or step aside. But don't back down just to keep them comfortable. 3. Use the mirror test. Before you agree to anything, look in the mirror and ask yourself, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to in myself? Time, focus, health, creativity. If your yes steals from your future, it's a counterfeit. You must stop buying people's approval with your own energy. You are not a doormat. You are not a vending machine for favors. You are a human being, not a utility. And no, setting boundaries won't make everyone love you, but it will help you start loving yourself again. Now listen carefully. No is a full sentence. No is a leadership skill. No is a sacred act of self-respect. You don't need to be rude. You don't need to be loud. But you do need to be clear, because vague no's create loopholes, and people who want to take advantage of you will always look for the loopholes. So close them, say what you mean, and stand by it. Let's take this even deeper. When you say no to what drains you, you make room for what feeds you. When you say no to chaos, you open space for clarity. When you say no to distraction, you give permission to your purpose to speak louder. Your no isn't selfish, it's sacred. Your no isn't rejection, it's alignment. You are no longer a slave to other people's urgency. You are a steward of your own destiny. So the next time your mouth wants to say yes out of guilt, fear, or habit, pause and breathe. And remember this truth. Every time you say no to something that's not for you, you're saying yes to the life you're truly meant to build. And that is how the strong stay strong. Now that you've started saying no, really saying it, let me show you what happens next. Because this is where everything changes. You stop chasing. You stop explaining. You stop asking for permission to live a life that is already yours. And for the first time in a long time, you start building, not out of obligation, not out of fear, but out of vision, clear, undiluted personal vision. When you stop trying to please everyone, you stop diluting your power. You reclaim time. You reclaim peace. You reclaimed your name. You're no longer the person who just goes along. Now you're the person who moves with intention. Let me tell you something no one else will. A life built on people-pleasing is always fragile. A life built on purpose is unshakable. Here's what begins to shift. 1. You attract better people. When you stop living like a chameleon, changing your colors to fit someone else's expectations, the real you begins to emerge. And when the real you shows up, people who respect clarity, boundaries, and purpose show up too. You don't need the whole world to like you. You need the right people to recognize you. And they will, but only after you stop shrinking to stay likable. 2. You find time for what really matters. Every yes you used to give away is now returned to you as energy, space, and focus. Now you read the book, you make the plan, you take the course, you rest, you think, you create. Why? Because you finally have room. You finally stopped leasing your time to other people's agendas. And now you can do what you've always been called to do. Build your life with intention. 3. You stop feeling invisible. You thought saying yes made you valuable. You thought being agreeable made you seen. But all it did was make you forgettable to others and invisible to yourself. When you start honoring what you really want, your presence changes, your voice changes, your posture changes. You start walking like someone who knows where they're going. That's when the world starts to notice, not because you're louder, but because you're real. And let me tell you, nothing is more magnetic than someone who walks in their truth without apology. 4. You become consistent. When you stop bending to every request, you finally get steady. You're no longer swayed by guilt. You're no longer run by FOMO. You're no longer dancing to the tune of someone else's urgency. You wake up, you check in with your own compass, and you act accordingly. You become predictable to yourself. And that, my friend, is the beginning of self-trust. Because when you trust your own no, you can finally trust your yes. And when you mean what you say, life aligns. People start respecting your time. You stop overcommitting. You start building momentum, not from chaos, from clarity. Let me end with this. You were not born to be a mirror for other people's needs. You were born to be a window through which your purpose shines. So stop living to keep the peace. Start living to make peace with yourself. Let them misunderstand. Let them be uncomfortable. That is not your work. Your work is this. Know what matters. Guard your attention. Protect your energy. Say no like your future depends on it, because it does. You don't need to be liked by everyone. You need to be loved by the person in the mirror. And that begins the moment you stop handing your power to every passing request and start answering to something higher, your purpose. Remember, your success begins the moment you decide to act.